Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another round of Adiraiju Plays Godzilla, Monster of Monsters for the NES. Today's playthrough is going to be for, the planet Neptune. Now you might be thinking, what the heck? Why is Neptune after Pluto? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Did Toho screw up? Well, of course Toho didn't screw up. Or more accurately, Toho didn't screw that up. Actually, in the last few years of the 20th century, Neptune and Pluto's orbits intersected slightly, so that the planet Neptune was actually farther out in the solar system than what we now call the dwarf planet Pluto. So, this was actually accurate. At any rate, Neptune is, well, it's not as long as Pluto, and that's the best I can say about it. It's still not pleasant because, well, at least Pluto had some diversity. Neptune is 100% all the way Machine City levels. It's just going to be one long episode of this, one level at a time. And even worse, there are no new monsters. Neptune is the only level in the entire game that does not introduce any new monsters whatsoever. Then again, I guess Earth introduced 2 new monsters, so that sort of makes up for it, but whatever. You're going to be dealing with a lot of different monsters trying to prevent you from getting there. And if you'll notice, Mothra and Godzilla, unlike most other levels, don't start right next to each other so you can tag team anything that comes along easily. In fact, if you're not careful, the enemy monsters can gang up on you if you don't reunite at some point pretty early on. So you're just gonna have to get there and be square. Get to each other and do what you can to fight your way across the board. It doesn't look very long, but Neptune, in practice, actually could take quite a while simply because it's so very massive, and it has so many different monsters in it. So that's going to be annoying. At any rate, we're also going to be talking quickly about the other Godzilla games that we might see in the future on this channel. I've been debating about a number of different games that I might play immediately after this one, and I'm not sure if I should go with the Gameboy Godzilla or Godzilla 2 War of the Monsters for the NES after this one. The Gameboy Godzilla is, well, they're both very different from this one. In fact, no Godzilla game until arguably Monster of Monsters would actually be just a plain old beat-em-up with Godzilla in it. Well, not in the US anyway. In Japan, there were actually a couple of pretty decent games that were released that starred Godzilla beating the hell out of other monsters, and for some reason they were just never released in the West, which is too bad, because all we got in the West was Super Godzilla and a couple of things for the was Super Godzilla, Godzilla 2 War of the Monsters, and that's really about it. Otherwise, there was also Godzilla Generations for the Dreamcast, and that was actually the very first 3D Godzilla game, but I'm not sure if it was ever released in the United States. I don't think it was, because it really did not get much notice at all, in spite of the fact that to this day, it's the only one of Toho's Godzilla movies that actually features Zilla as a playable character, since Zilla was very new at the time Godzilla Generations was released. There's also Godzilla Trading Battle, which was, I never understood the point of card games played on a video game system, but that's what it was. It was Godzilla Trading Battle was a card game that was played on, I believe, the NES, and that was about it, all there was to it. There were a couple of other games, there were a couple of new monsters that were introduced in Godzilla Trading Battle, such as Bulk, Zardan, and Yarumu, I think that was their names, but that were never really seen again. And I'm not sure what to say about that. Let's see. In addition to... Actually, I think that I'm probably going to be ultimately doing 4 more Godzilla games, although they could take a while. not to come out, but to be completed. Godzilla 2 War of the Monsters is actually a fairly long game, because it has a whole lot of different, because it's actually a strategy game rather than a sideways scroller shoot-em-up, beat-em-up. And it doesn't star Godzilla, it actually stars the military that you're playing as, but it's actually fairly workable. It's not great by any means, and it's not as enjoyable as a lot of others, but it works for what it's just a decent strategy game that doesn't really have anything else to go for it. I make it sound so very sad. There's also Super Godzilla. That's really weird. You know those quick time event games that were all the rage a couple of years back, like what was it, Jurassic Park the game and Back to the Future the game, that were mostly just quick time events? Super Godzilla was sort of like that. There were no real there's no real beat 'em up, simple straight shoot 'em ups. It's just mostly a combination of strategy and getting the right button it prompts. It's at the same time it sort of isn't. It's really complicated. I'll get to that when I get to it. But I'm probably going to be doing War of the Monsters next, so I guess that's a thing. But then again, like Godzilla, Monster of Monsters, War of the Monsters can sometimes get a little repetitive, but then again, I don't think War of the Monsters has the same sort of wasted potential that Godzilla NES has, because Godzilla NES, Monster of Monsters, whatever you want to call it, is actually quite entertaining for the first two worlds, before they just decide, you know what, we're gonna make this not fun anymore. And that's what happens eventually. Let's see, what else? What other games are there? I'm actually gonna have to look it up. The monsters that are, there's a lot of Godzilla games over the years, though most of them have only been released in Japan. One of the more recent ones was actually a Pack-a-Slot game that actually had some live-action footage in it, and it looked pretty darn good. It had the Godzilla 2000 suit facing off against Gigan, but we're never going to see that in the West. And apparently in 1991, a video game about Rodan was slated to be released for the NES, but eventually it was just plain sort of forgotten, and a couple of years later, War of the Monsters was released at its place. Maybe this has something to do with the fact that this game actually never does have Anguirus or Rodan in the game, in spite of them being some of Godzilla's most famous and popular allies and foes. Ally/foe. That's pretty much... It's like Dragon Ball Z. The line between friend and foe is very, 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 very fine. What else? Oh, up there you can actually see the Mysterian space stations that showed up in the original The Mysterians, and the same prop was later repurposed as a space station of Earth in the movie Gorath. I think that's what happened. Yeah, I can't remember. I think that's what it was. Let's see, what else was there? There's also Godzilla Movie Studio Tour, which was apparently a video game that was released for the... That was actually apparently a CD-ROM game that was released as sort of a promotional package, and it introduced a number of new monsters, including some really weird ones that were never seen before or since, but most of those were just, props or suggestions that never got off the drawing board. You remember those weird, goofy-looking monsters like Mamagon from Godzilla vs. Gigan? I have a feeling this was sort of like those. And let's see, other than that, there's not much to say. So what are we facing right now, aside from, everything trying to kill us? I still don't understand why so much of Earth's... What the heck are those? They're blipping their way across the screen, the big orange things. They look so familiar, and yet I can't place them. Well, at least Neptune is... Oh, come on! Yeah, I hate it when... I really have grown to loathe those trinary missile launchers, because they are just sort of obnoxious with how hard they are to accurately hit. Those missile launchers have a very small hitbox, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The best thing that I've discovered personally was to try and aim yourself at, well, aim all your weaponry, at the barrels of the top and bottom of the missile launcher while you can. Oh, I do so. Well, at least the aliens seem to be growing desperate now that we've taken down all the monsters that can actually. Now that we've taken down the monsters that really aren't that dangerous, they seem to be sending out everything that is moderately dangerous out at us. But you'd think they'd sort of decide to do the other way around. Hey, I have an idea. Let's take Gigan and Mecha Godzilla and send them at them right off the bat. Maybe they just needed some time to get them in place? I don't know. In place. A monster's place is to be killing. What are you? He can't even do anything. He's just sort of waving his arms. I'll get you for this! Well, I've never quite understood why Gigan should really be incredibly dangerous. When I first saw him, actually what first got me into the Godzilla games was Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, and when I saw Gigan for the first time, I was thinking, holy crap, this guy must be damn near invincible. He's got giant frickin' meat hooks for arms, and he's a giant buzzsaw in his belly, and he can pretty much he's pretty much a do-anything monster, and he can't do anything, and he will do anything. Yeah, I'll fight Mecha Godzilla. Yeah. Oops. I'm starting to learn. I'm actually starting to dodge at things that they send my way at the very beginning of the game. Sure, they're still unfair as hell, but at least I'm starting to learn. Ow. This was back in the days when video games were deliberately very difficult, because there were arcades back then, and the whole point of the arcade was to make you waste your quarter. Owie. To this day, I've played so many arcade games, but the only one of the really great old side-scrollers that I ever beat was X-Men, and that was at a friend's bar mitzvah. I still remember that. I always played Cyclops. Arrgh. And away we go! Mechagodzilla can be pretty obnoxious here, but he's not too bad. Ow, ha 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 ha. You missed, oops. You're missing a little too closely for comfort. As a matter of fact, you've developed a singe to my whiskers. How do you singe your whiskers, anyway? That sounds like something that you would do after a really messy barbecue. Well, Todd, I hope you enjoy the sausages, and I am so very sorry about what happened to your face. He's still going. He's still going. Come on, just a little bit closer. No? Okay. Oh, I do hate it when they decide to turn around and get smart like that. No. You're not gonna attack me from behind. I'm just gonna have to swat you. I do hate it when sometimes those things actually are going to shoot at you, and sometimes they're not. But there's no way of actually knowing, and sometimes they have that chain reaction effect, and sometimes they don't. It's just sort of annoying and obnoxious. Even when it looks like they should have the chain reaction, sometimes it just doesn't happen. Which is not pleasant. Oh, come on, I hate it when they get really picky like that. Even the atomic ray didn't do anything. I think they've actually found something that can take down Godzilla, I was gonna say. You know, every single time these giant monsters show up, some wise guy decides, you know what we should do? We should create giant robots to fight them. I don't know about you, but if I'm being attacked by a giant reptile, moth, demon, leopard thing, I'm not going to think, I need a giant robot to face this. I'm going to think, I need a bigger gun. Maybe that's just the American in me talking, but me need big gun now. Well, at least... Well... Pow. Godzilla annoying, but not as annoying as they can be in later parts of the game. Even this late in the game, his life bar really is nothing to boast about, and you can often take him out right in the first go-through if you're still playing as Godzilla. And that's the end of Godzilla. Where you just, Oh, come on. Oh well, only one thing to do now. You know, I thought I could actually get through this game while ignoring one monster. That would have been kind of interesting. Because, well, in the next level, you'll see what I mean when I say that you can't really dodge them in the next level, but at any rate, here on Neptune, there's not much, room to maneuver around. There's actually, I'm sorry, what am I thinking? There's more room to maneuver around them. In fact, there's so much room that it's probably the easiest to dodge other monsters in the game, but this time around, they decided, no, we are out for blood. Boot, boot, boot to the face, face, face. Ow. Okay, you know what? Die. Oh, come on! Sometimes the timer gets obnoxious. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna end this fight once and for all, so I don't have to deal with Baragon again. Well, not until the next level anyway. But this is actually the penultimate level, so if you've actually stuck with me this far, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and, I'm very sorry. What the heck, was the level counter exploding? I mean, I know I'm getting up there. I think the highest level you can get to in the game is 16, but... Ow, ow, ow. Right now, I just want to thank you all who have actually stuck with watching this game... This that came out so wrong. Stuck around and actually watched this game playthrough. And... yeah. At any rate, what else are we going to play next? After Godzilla Godzilla 2 War of the Monsters, I'm thinking Super Godzilla most likely, and then sort of a toss-up between Godzilla on the Game Boy and Godzilla Domination. But I'll get to that when I get to it. Ooh, boy, 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 oh boy, oh boy. I want to fight some again with Godzilla. You know what? I'll just turn around and, get to where I can. That is an awkward place to put a little empty spot, but whatever. Oh, I also read somewhere in some of the supplemental materials, apparently all of this that we're walking through is sort of a battleground created by the aliens from Planet X in order to best test the skills of the monsters who are coming up against them. Which explains why we have the planets in the background, as opposed to anywhere else. But, okay, that's stupid and it makes no sense, but at least there's a reason. A stupid reason? Fire! Let's see. What else? Oh, what the... You know, why are those things blipping in and out of existence? That is just sort of obnoxious. I mean, I understand that some games on the NES and even on the Super Nintendo later would sort of have this blipping effect, frames per second, depending on how many frames per second are seen and used against them. But this is just sort of obnoxious, especially when every so often, like, a chunk of Godzilla's sprite will glitch out and go flying to a different part of the screen. And I understand that Godzilla's sprite is sort of supposed to be on a black background, and as a result, yikes. And as a result, you can sort of see everything that's through his head, which is just obnoxious. The sprite itself should actually be able to contain some black pixels, right? So why doesn't it? It's just blank whenever it should be black, and as a result, Godzilla sort of looks more like a cardboard cutout of Godzilla than anything else. I mean, for 8-bit for 8-bit graphics, this is a lot of this artwork is actually pretty darn good for the NES at least. But all things considered, it could still use a lot of work. And you have all probably seen the sprite work that I put on the thumbnails for the videos, right? Well, I have to put it on the left in that black spot, because otherwise it's pretty obvious that a lot of these monsters have big chunks of them, and the big chunks of their bodies just sort of being see-through. This is especially a bad case with, like, Mechagodzilla and others that have a lot of black spots on their bodies. Oh my goodness, I just realized the truth. That's why we fight them on these black backgrounds. It's not because we're in the middle of nowhere, it's because there's nothing else that we could use to really make them... Yeah, I'll fight Mechagodzilla, take him down as Mothra. It's because there's no other backdrop that could possibly be used in order to make them seem, well, not cardboard plasticky. Well, that's the end of Mechagodzilla. Even at the very highest levels, Mothra is pretty much a pushover compared to Godzilla in terms of actual power and life meters. She only gets like 3/4 as much as Godzilla, I believe. And it's still higher than it was before at the beginning of the game, way higher than at the beginning, but it's still not that impressive. At least her attack power seems to increase as well, so her little pea shooter, while still being pretty pathetic, actually gets things out of the way after a while. It's too bad she doesn't get faster, though. That's the one thing that's really good about Mothra, is the fact that she's fast and she can get you around obstacles pretty quickly and easily. But it doesn't really count for much when you don't really speed up very much over the course of the game, as it throws more and more and more insanity at you. What are those? Never mind, I'm an idiot. It's several Moonlight SY3s, and I am thankful for that. Hooray for many Moonlight SY3s. It's kind of interesting how this game sort of mirrors Final Wars, which would come years later. And Final Wars was also a game where Mothra just is pretty much the only other monster on the planet that can actually stop Godzilla. There's a flying battleship that helps out the planet at large by luring the monsters along behind it. Well, it lures Godzilla along behind it, only it was the Gotengo instead of the Super XY3. Super XY3, what am I saying? The Super X is our enemy in this game! There's only one Moonlight SY3, and it is no... Actually, no, it is you. Why is it gold-colored, though? That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, having the Moonlight SY3 be red one moment, then gold. I mean, I get that there's probably supposed to be an army of them, and it's like the Super X's, where it's actually an army of Exilian ships. Why are the Super X's... I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The Super X's were human machines. Why are they supporting the aliens now? It's a bit weird. Anyways, in the West, the only... this game and Super Godzilla years later were the only two Godzilla games that really got a lot of widespread recognition. And it sort of makes sense, because this game is sort of like the Showa era, which was the era of Godzilla movies that took place from the 1950s to the 1970s, and is the one of the pretty much all of the goofier Godzilla titles came out in the Showa era. Not all of them, but the so bad it's good ones certainly did. And as a result, it's not looked upon that fondly nowadays, but it still got its charms. The Showa era was, let's see, 1954 when the original Godzilla came out, to 1974 with Terror of Mechagodzilla. Then Godzilla went into retirement for about 10 years before coming out again in Godzilla 1985, or The Return of Godzilla. After that, it was the Heisei series, which was from 1984 to 1995, when Godzilla of that series actually died in the end of Godzilla vs. Destroyer. Now, the Showa movies and the Heisei movies each take place in their own separate continuity, so that's a thing. After the Showa and Heisei movies, there was the Millennium series of movies, and that was a series of movies that was just plain... How do I put this? It's not bad. It's not crazy. It's just... Think of the problems of a Sci-Fi Channel original movie. It's wacky, it's got too much CGI, and even though it looks a lot slicker than the old stuff, it also loses a lot of the charm. Not sure what to make of them. But what's even worse is that Godzilla in the Heisei, in the Millennium, or X series, which took place from 1999 to 2004, from Godzilla 2000 to Godzilla Final Wars. And that one lasted just 5 years? Wow, 5 years. Well, actually 6 years. 5 or 6 years, anyways, depending on what you believe. Because Godzilla 2000 actually came out in 1999, and... yeah, but I remember the Millennium Frenzium. Maybe some of you younger viewers don't, but that was nuts. See what I mean by it's almost impossible to kill that thing? The bright red horseshoe death fireball? Yeah. Anyways, at least we're coming up on the end of Neptune, because I was just... Ugh. See you next time, folks, on Planet X. See you then.